Hey guys, VoidRaven5829 here. So just I have a little rant here for you. So a friend of mine recently met him and started playing 40k with him. He's a really good guy. He's kind of in the same boat I was, where I was playing against Crispy, and I was just getting trounced every freaking game. All right, and it destroys morale, and it just it creates friction between friends. It's just not a good thing to have. And this guy, the same opponent that Michael has, is doing the same exact thing, where Mike requests, a casual game, because Michael plays Sisters, Dark Angels, and he's splashing in AdMech specifically to play this guy. But anyway, so he requests a casual game, and this opponent agrees to a casual game, and yet continuously brings in the the hardest cheddar he can find. Like he's always bringing in Scarab Occults, which granted are really expensive, but with all the buffs and everything like that, he brings Magnus to every game he can. Without reason, honestly. He does generally stick to playing fluffy, but it's just, he's really a big letdown in terms of trying to be a friendly gamer. I had that too with Crispy. You ask him to tone him down, and they just don't. And I'm sure Mike and I aren't the only ones in the community that face this. There's always going to be that guy, that brings in the sharpest cheddar he possibly can, specifically just to win. And he doesn't care about the story. He doesn't care about making sure it's a good game for both players. He just wants the... Alright. I posted about this on Daka twice now, both because of Crispy, and it's just... it hurts so much because it just guts the game, Like, I got into this game because I thought it was really fun. It'd be fun to learn how to, paint and build and everything like that. And it's a great community once you, break in and, understand the language and the jargon. But the community really breaks down when there's a thorn of a player that just breaks it up. Brings everybody down by their sheer presence. They're constantly overshadowing tables. They're, quietly judging you, and you can feel their eyes in the back of your head because they have this reputation of just being jerks. Excuse me. And I've experienced it where I build a list, I play against some random guy, and Crispy comes up. And, he's like, oh, you're bringing this and this and this and this? Okay, hey, you want to get a game in after this one? And, of course, you get trounced because he list tailors against you. And then when you confront him about it, he claims, oh, I didn't, this is a very general purpose list, I've had this list forever, blah, 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 bullshit. And it just really sucks, Like, there's no other way to put it. It just sucks. And so, as an introduction, leading into how to avoid those kinds of people and how to, take the power back, take your community back into being a friendly environment. Part 1, just ignore them. Seriously, it's like the best thing I've ever done in terms of Crispy. Just ignoring, not talking to them, not even, sometimes not even acknowledging them if they're being particularly snooty. If they're hovering over your game, just move so that they are out of your line of sight, and honestly pick up the conversation more with your actual opponent, so that you can drive these guys away. If they interrupt your conversation, just either, again, ignore them, or politely say, I'm sorry you interrupted me, I'm talking to my opponent now, please go away. It's firm, sharp, but mostly polite. Another thing you can do is try to find a different community. This is another thing I did to try to get away from Crispy. I found a meetup group in my area. We meet once a month, and we're all really casual players. Most of us are, 20s, 30s, and very casual. Actually, a good proportion of us are all married. There are a couple of new players, a couple of kids, but that's basically it. It's really laid back. It really brought back the beer and pretzels vibe of the game for me. And you can do that by changing stores. You can have your group of if you can't change stores, or if there's only one in your area, you can go into the store on a different day with your friends and try to bring up community on the days that those guys don't show up, and vice versa. That's another way I managed to cope with it. And another thing, I've gotten a lot of feedback, not feedback, negative input towards this last point, specifically because it's just feeding the beast that you don't want to have on you. But I have found that getting that one huge win against this guy generally makes them back off. This happened with me with Crispy, because he was murdering me with his standard CAD Space Marines against my Chaos Space Marines, and he was just absolutely butchering me every time. And I swear my dice were against me the entire time. Constantly failing 3+ saves, getting hots on every plasma, etc., etc. Anyway, and so one time I challenged him to a game where I didn't tell him what I was bringing, because that kind of became the new normal with him. Excuse me. I challenged him to a game where he didn't know what I was bringing. And even after we did do the list exchange, he did change a couple of special weapons around, but that's besides the point. I brought Renegades and Heretics in the Purge detachment with the Ordnance Tyrant, and my troop section was 5 units of 2 of the Thud guns, the heavy quad mortars, and they were all in little, 2 cannon groups, specifically so he couldn't target more than 2 at a time, and just wipe me off the board in one swoop. And it got to a point where I was dropping so many templates. His backfield was completely decimated. All he had were 3 drop pods coming in on turn 2. My turn 1, I just killed most of his backfield, popped his 1 rhino, and dropped his bike squad down from 7 to 2 guys. And his turn 1, he drops in, forgets that artillery crew are toughness 7 when being shot at, even with flamers, which magically weren't in his list before. And then on my second turn, I started targeting his dudes with my artillery at that close range. And when he asked me, "What are you doing? Why are you shooting so close?" I responded with, "The gun is strength 5. It's still a shooting attack against my own guys, which are it's a shooting attack, so they're still toughness 7. So I'm wounding myself in 6s." And I blew up half of his half of each of his 2 tac squads that dropped down, and then charged them with grots. And he just gave up because he knew I could. He didn't have the mass, the model mass, to chew through all my grots in that one assault phase, and then he'd be free on his turn after a close combat, and then I'd just shoot him again and charge him with something else. He gave up on turn 2 because of the sheer amount of cheese I brought to the table. Now, long story short, my point is, if you really want to get back at the guy, just own him. Find some kind of list that he's not expecting, and B, is really easily spammable, and that you can have the models for in a relatively quick time. And just nail them. I think of it as the equivalent of starting a face punch, or starting a fight. It's. But again, you have to judge the character of the guy. Like, if he's quote quote well intended and not wanting to be a dick and whatever, but he still is, then go for it. Because chances are he's not going to retaliate by flipping the table or killing you or or slashing your tires at the end of the night. It really comes down to who it is, and sometimes jarring them like that, having them realize that you were bringing a non-friendly list to a friendly game. Flipping the tables on, turning the tables on them, that can jar them into oh, I have been being a dick, I apologize, and they it might reset the counter, so to speak. But other people are dense and just don't even learn from it. They just see it as a loss, and a wound on their pride that they actually lost. Anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest. It really bothers me when there are guys in this community, or people in general in this community, that build quote friendly lists that are net list off of tournaments. It's not. You have to play to your meta. If your meta is very open and friendly and is a beer and pretzels meta, you don't bring in the tournament ITC lists. It's just not cool, and you're either going to get everybody to hate you and end up ostracized, or never mind. There's no or. You'll just get ostracized and everybody will hate you. That's just how it is, at least in my experience. But anyway, like I said, I just wanted to get that off my chest. I know it was really rambly and ranty, but moral of the story: don't be a dick. And if you think you are that kind of guy, that you if you notice that people don't like playing against you because you bring lists that always somehow manage to win, instead of just build your list with your opponent, especially if it's a good friend, build your list with your opponent and see what they think about your list. Go through the whole 9 yards of of seeing what you think that they can do against your army. Or another thing is, if you're building your list alone, or just trying something out, imagine what it's like to play against what you're bringing. Imagine what kind of things you'd have to bring in order to stop it. And if it comes into tournament level stuff, like Invisible Death Stars, or Wraith Knight spam, or Riptide spam, or anything like that, maybe tone it down a notch. Because maybe your opponent doesn't have that, and they're not expecting to be playing tournament level things on a Friday night in some guy's basement. Alright, I've gone long enough. Thank you for listening, and I hope somebody got something out of this. That's really all there is. Alright? This has been Void Raven 5829. See you next time.